I feel a vlog coming on. I need to feel a bottle opener coming on. Upside down IPL, India Pale Lagers. I don't know what that's about. So, a couple of different things, question marks have come up that make me want to do a vlog now. And I happen to have a few minutes free, which I have not had much time free lately. Oh man, this view of myself is much too big. I'm going to shrink the window on my computer. So, as you may or may not have noticed, I've been sort of absent from YouTube, except for a few short videos, and then a few days ago I finally did a comic book thoughts video. But one of the big things that's happened to me in my comic world in the past, 6 weeks, is I switched comic book shops. I left the very excellent Excalibur Comics and I moved over to the also quite excellent Cloud9 Comics. Cloud9 is a much smaller store. And so there was some people asked me why I had moved or what inspired it. So I thought I'd talk about that. Because if it were you guys, I'd be interested in hearing about your comic book shop experiences. But so there were sort of, I guess, maybe 3 big reasons that made me switch shops. One is Cloud9 is literally it's not literally in my backyard. It's really in my neighborhood. It's roughly 3 blocks from my house. It's in a little commercial set of corners, an intersection where there's some commercial stuff. And, I have been hanging out in that general vicinity for 20 years. So it's so exciting to see a comic book shop open up right there. Excalibur is really close, but it's kind of in the next little neighborhood over. Portland, Oregon has tons of these little neighborhoods, each with its own slightly different personality. And so, having lived in this one neighborhood for so long, I feel quite fond of it. So, very exciting that there was a comic book store there. 2, maybe there's 4 main reasons. This seems kind of minor, but Excalibur Comics kept their comics in plastic bags, which is probably great. A much greater chance of getting a comic that hasn't been damaged. But technically you were allowed to, but it was a big hassle to try to open up the bag, take the comic book out without damaging it on the tape, and flip through it to see what the comic book was. Cloud9 is more like a normal comic book shop, or most other comic book shops around, that you can go in and you can look at what you're going to buy before you buy it. So that's kind of important to me. On the flip side, though, Cloud9 is very small, and they're just starting out doing pull lists and having new comics. When they started, they just sold back issues. They've only been open about a year. And so when I first would go over there, it was just back issues. So there was no reason to start a pull list there. And but once they did start doing pull lists, it took me a long while to just get my butt in action and switch. But because they're small, they don't get in a lot of, and their main business is still back issues. They don't get in a lot of the new comics that they aren't 100% sure they're going to sell. So I can't just walk in there and find all the Valiant comics for that week available to me, or all the Oni comics or whatever. Although I have found random Valiant and Oni comics there. So one of my I'm trying to wait for trade more. And one of my bad habits is I go into the comic book shop, I'm getting 6 or 8 or 10 comics, and then I pick out some more than the comics on my pull. And But so far, I'm kind of regretting that part of things. It's working a little too well. There's lots of comics I can't get that I know are out there, like, say, House of Penance or, just about anything. There's very few things. I can pick up Batman or the Avengers or whatever, but the chances of them, I have to plan ahead and tell them to put things on my pull list. But, and then the third or fourth reason is I get an even better discount there. And I have to have less comics on my pull list to get that discount. I get a 25% discount. I think if I have more than 25 comics on my pull list, and I have about 40, and that got me a 20% discount at the other store. And 20% was a very good discount. 25%, it just is that much easier to kind of spend a little more money in a weird way. So, and while the people were nice at Excalibur, I feel somehow more comfortable at Cloud9 too. Maybe because they're a smaller shop and it feels less busy. Half the time or more than half the time I'm in there, I'm the only person in there, and they've been really nice. So the one real problem for me is I find I do want to be able to pick up more comics that I at the last minute realize are out and are exciting or whatever. So I'm gonna have to work on that, planning ahead more, and figure that out better. Or also just get used to being more patient, waiting for trades. It really is fun picking up comics on the day at the comic book shop. So, on a different side of comics, I wanted to talk about the digital comics scene as it is now, because just today there was a big announcement from ComiXology, which was of a new service called ComiXology Unlimited that offered that you pay $6 a month and you get unlimited free comics to read. You only can read the comics that are marked unlimited in ComiXology's app or website or what have you. And all the press they got just said, "Oh yeah, all you can eat comics, just like Netflix, just get however much you want." And then I think even though all the news sites just repeated what ComiXology wanted them to say, there must have been criticism on Twitter or whatever that they noticed, because they already are on someone's podcast doing spin. Because the truth is that it's a very limited selection, especially given that, you don't get Marvel and you don't get DC. But let's say that's fine. You get unlimited access to indie comics. No, you don't get unlimited access to indie comics. Say you want to read Saga. Let's see, I have it on my iPad. Say you want to read Saga, and that's a long continuing story that would be great to binge on. So you're a member of ComiXology Unlimited. I'm waiting for a website to appear. So you can read all of the sagas that have the unlimited banner on them. And what has the unlimited banner on it? Saga Volume 1. And as all of us who read Saga know, Saga is one long continuous story. So after you pay your $5.99 or $6.99 a month to read Saga number 1, you're still going to have to pay $11.99 for each other volume of Saga to get the rest of the story. So that they call that unlimited. They call that all the comics you could possibly want. Say, wow, look at this. You can get Jodorowsky and Mobius's The Black Inkal on unlimited. But then the rest of the Mobius run on Inkal, you're going to have to pay, not too bad, it's on sale right now, $1.99, or you're going to have to pay $5.99 per copy. But and you might be happy just reading one, but you probably want to read the whole story. So this is, this is kind of harmless. You can say, well, people pay $6, they still get a lot of comics to read if that's true. But it irritates me how the press just delivers to the public, as if it's a news story, the spin that whatever big company wants them to deliver. And I say this as someone who used to do arts journalism, but it was on a local level. But even there, I always felt like no one was very interested in an honest report to people. And I also once had, for quite a long while, I had this odd job where I read newspapers all day for a press clipping bureau. For about 10 years, I worked for the press clipping bureau, some of that time part-time while I was writing. But as you would read stories over and over again in all these different newspapers, you would see misinformation getting spread from newspaper to newspaper to newspaper. You would also learn after a while that the true part of the story was often the last paragraph of a story. Well, we don't want to spin this negatively, but here's the negative facts down at the bottom. Or the part of the article that maybe makes the negative thing about someone turn out not to be quite so negative, like if you're spinning something against a political enemy of yours or someone that you don't support politically in the case of a newspaper. Anyway, and I was particularly shocked, the podcast that the ComiXology president was on, and I'll find it and link below, was a podcast that I've been really enjoying a lot, that's had lots of great weekly interviews with writers and artists, and it seemed much more sympathetic to artists than other interview podcasts like Word Balloon that I've listened to are. But it definitely seemed like the host of the podcast was helping ComiXology spin the story exactly the way they wanted. So they mentioned the interviewer mentioned, leading the interviewee into discussing them, the few things that ComiXology does have more volumes of available. So they talk quite a lot about Transformers, which has a lot of, if you want to read a lot of Transformers, maybe ComiXology Unlimited would be worth it for you. There's only 2 volumes of this Transformers series that are not on Unlimited, although they are volume 6 and volume 8. So if you wanted to read all of them, you'd still have to pay for something. And then they also talked about Hellboy. And that's actually quite cool. They have a lot of... where did it go? They have they have 3 Hellboy volumes available as part of their unlimited plan, and the rest are not there. So the 2 good things they could come up with were the Transformers and Hellboy. So I would say for most of us out here, unless you're just starting out reading comics, a few months of ComiXology Unlimited might be useful to you to just try out a lot of stuff and then cancel your ComiXology Unlimited subscription and then start buying the things that you found out you liked. Or just binge as much as you possibly can in the first month that you currently can get for free. But realize even for free, it's like it's like what's the word for something that you get the first thing free and then you have to pay afterwards, like the drug addicts do. It's not going to lead you to more free reading. However, there's other options out there. Most people know about Marvel Unlimited, and I think they may offer a free month too. But they are, if you love Marvel Comics, they are a great deal, and they offer I think like 7 or 8 or 10,000 comics that are available. Not all of Marvel Comics, but a huge number, and generally you can you can binge read a huge number of comics in a row on Marvel Unlimited. I have run into oddities, like they only have Dazzler #1 and Dazzler #40 available. Why they did that, I don't know. But you could read, 300 Spider-Man comics in a row if you wanted on Marvel Unlimited. It's very slow to load, I have to say, on my iPad. So maybe I shouldn't wait for it to load up. But so this is kind of my catch up on various, because I do a lot of digital comics reading, a lot with my daughter. So another major thing that is free is called Hoopla, and it may only be in the US. I don't know if it's available elsewhere. It's a library app. So my local library, and it sounds like lots of other people's libraries from what I've seen online, subscribes to this service, and then I can read or watch or listen to 8 items a month. And that includes lots of graphic novels. Here's a ton of DC here. And what they have a very, they don't have everything, but this is under the superhero category. So they have a lot of stuff. So if you wanted a good way to binge and to introduce or introduce yourself to a lot of comics you might not have wanted to buy first, and you have a library card in your library, which seems like tons of libraries in the United States, and I don't know if this is true in England or Australia or elsewhere, offer this service. Do this for free. If you don't have this service, or you want more than 8 comics a month, 8 graphic novels a month, and for I think the same amount as ComiXology Unlimited, you can get this app called Scribd. Very odd name. And it started as a all-you-can-eat digital book app, but now it has audiobooks, digital books, and graphic novels. And although it doesn't have everything, I think there is some Marvel on here. There is multiple volumes of things. It's a less easy app to move around than Hoopla, so I'm maybe not showing you the best version of things. Excuse me. So they mix together stuff from the kind of graphic novel kind of book companies, along with the kinds of things we see in comic book shops, like Valiant and Dark Horse and the rest. Oops. There's a Rogue Trooper. So I think Scribd is an interesting one to try out if you're looking at paid services. You can also do the first month free there. And I did the first month free and really enjoyed it, but I already had Marvel Unlimited, and I was already reading a lot of digital comics through ComiXology and through the Dark Horse app. I buy comics through the Dark Horse app when they're selling bundles, and when they have a couple times a year, they have big sales where it's 50% off, and then I get 50% off a bunch of their bundles. Basically, when I buy digital comics, it's stuff that will just then be either to read with my daughter, because reading comics digitally has really been good with my daughter, or just stuff I want to have handy to read easily. And if there's a big enough sale, then I'll get it. Another interesting kind of digital thing that, there's this other one, which is another all-you-can-eat thing, which has just its own original comics, called Stella. And my daughter and I have looked through here, and we mostly have not found... You can read the first chapter of each one for free before you decide to subscribe. We have not found ones that... Okay, Stella, you're not working. There we go. So we have not found things on Stella that appeal to my daughter enough for us to pay the I think it's more like $4 a month for Stella. It's not a very good app it's turning out to be anyway. So I don't highly recommend Stella, but it might depend on your taste and whether you can test that out, try them out. And one my daughter and I have liked a lot is called Webtoon, and it's originally a Korean website and app that is hugely popular in Korea. They actually pay, even though it's free and there's no ads. I guess they make so much money in Korea somehow that they pay even their American artists what supposedly a decent amount of money to... I have a little bit of trouble maneuvering around it to get to... I wanted to find the one that my daughter and I like the most. But so an interesting thing about Webtoons, and maybe Stella also, is it's completely native to the phone and tablet experience. Everything is written to scroll down. It's not from a page to be translated. So each chapter is a continuous scroll down, and then the next week you get the next chapter. And when done well, it's an interesting new way to take the art form. And there's one called Space Boy that my daughter and I like, which is kind of a romance and a mystery set in the future. I was hoping to find Space Boy. And I subscribed to it, so you would think it would be easy for me to find. But anyway, a lot of these here's Space Boy. A lot of these probably come originally from Korea, but then there are the ones that are being made by American artists or perhaps also artists from around the world. This Space Boy is by an American artist. I heard him interviewed on another podcast, which is how I found out about this. I'll try to dig up that podcast and put a link to it too. Might take me a little bit to find that one, but eventually I will link to it in this. So this is kind of a story of an everyday girl about a couple hundred years in the future, going to school and meeting a mysterious boy who may or may not be human. And it's pretty simply drawn, but this artist is a master of the scroll down reading experience, and it is highly addictive. So my daughter can't wait for each new episode to come out, and they come out every week on whatever their specified day is. This one comes out on Thursdays, I think. And then at the bottom, they always post art sent in by their fans, and sometimes notes from the artist and stuff. And then at the very bottom are comments from the readers. And they just show the 3 top comments, but you can look at hundreds of comments if you want. So it's an interesting thing. I don't know if it will be free forever, but or maybe it will eventually have ads. So there's just a lot of, if you are interested in digital comics, a lot of things to look into, and I think the least of them is ComiXology Unlimited, I'm afraid. And for anyone who can, I just get Hoopla. Why not? Even if you just want to watch a movie, you can get movies there or audiobooks also. So, another thing I've been thinking about a lot is DC Rebirth. When it was first announced and the $2.99 price point was announced and double shipping comics, I was kind of excited about it. And then when we saw the creative teams, and I thought more about the result of what the potential result of the double shipping might be, either with alternating storylines or alternating artists or whatever, I became very nervous about it. But I'm kind of cycling through. Now it's almost here, and I'm getting a little more excited about it. I'm thinking, well, maybe I should get some more things. At one point, I was looking at information, and I saw 3 comics about female superheroes in a row, all of which had male creative teams. And that was Supergirl Supergirl has a female artist on it. Supergirl and Wonder Woman, I guess there's one female artist on that too. But male writers. and then Superwoman. And I thought it was kind of odd, especially now that there's so many more visible women creators in the comics field now than there might have been even 5 years ago, and definitely 10 years ago, or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. Although I would argue that in the 80s we got an influx of women, and then somehow they kind of disappeared, a lot of them, until we got, well, I don't know exactly when they disappeared, but it seemed like there were more coming in, and then there seemed like there were less, and now it seems like there are more coming in, but even more now than ever before, I think. So at first I thought, whoa, they're not having any comics written by women, not to mention comics about female characters written by women. But there are 2 comics they have that are being written by women, and I think that's Batgirl and the Gotham Siren, not the Gotham Siren, Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. And Harley Quinn is also co-written by a woman. So I'm now kind of tempted. When I think about female characters, I want them to be ones, because my daughter so craves female characters. I want them to be ones I can read with my daughter. So I might check out the Birds of Prey one. At least by the art, it looks a little more kid-friendly. We'll see. But I think DC has a huge leadership problem. And I think it's funny that the same leaders just keep shuffling around creators and don't really seem to have a new vision. Maybe there will be a new vision or they just have a confused, garbled vision. And we all blame Dan DiDio. But I kind of like Dan DiDio. I'm very suspicious of Jim Lee. And you might say that just in general, Jim Lee and Jeff Johns might be good creators, but are they really good masterminds of a comic book line? Is Dan DiDio either, but it seemed like a lot of people were pretty happy with DC before Jim Lee and Johns came along as masterminds when DiDio was still in charge. But I haven't researched that DiDio era very closely to know for sure. But what I've been thinking, is there's someone above all of them, and they answer to her. Her name is Diane Nelson. She's the president of DC Entertainment, and she and probably people above her are the ones who say, we want to see better sales, or what are you going to do to change this? And those guys have to dance and come up with something, and then they have to take the credit or the blame publicly, and she stays in the background. But I kind of wonder if she is the mismanager of it. We seem to see stuff that implies a mismanagement in the DC editorial stuff. We used to hear lots of complaints. They seem to have stopped the leaks on the complaints, or maybe there's less complaints. But then there was a lot of recent criticism about sexual harassment and stuff. I think this Diane Nelson person dodges the bullet and stays out of the limelight. And, if women aren't happy with the way DC Comics, women or other fans are not happy with the way DC Comics is treating women, I think they should publicly ask those questions of Diane Nelson, either on Twitter or in person or whatever. I don't know if she shows up at comic book conventions or whatever, but she's the one with the real power. I don't know if she should go or she should make the decision to get rid of some other people or shuffle the editorial people around. I think too much is blamed on the creative people, and I think the creative people are puppets of this system of tiers coming down with Diane Nelson at the top. I don't know that this is all my surmise, but I was thinking these things, or start thinking these things whenever I see complaints about DC Comics. I do think a lot of good stuff is done at DC. I thought there were a lot of good comics mixed in with the New 52. People weren't happy with Superman and the way they handled him, and I agree with that. But and there were some bad Batman books and some good ones. But there were lots of other small books that were good and at least lasted for a while. At least they gave them a chance. And there'll probably continue to be interesting things going on. Another thing is I am excited over that lower price point. Because I still feel when I buy a $4 comic, especially if it's just like a 20 or 22 page comic, I feel a little bit like I'm overpaying. I feel like I'm supporting the comic book. I feel like I'm paying a little extra bonus to the comic book company to encourage them to keep publishing this comic, which kind of makes sense to me, for a low print run, small press, very unique, idiosyncratic comic. And maybe it's just my psychology is different from others. I've seen all these articles where comic book store retailers say, "Oh, the comic book fans are not price sensitive. You might as well just charge higher prices." I've seen heard various people on podcasts saying that Image Comics is making a huge mistake with its $9.99 first trades, that they're leaving money on the table and people would buy it anyway for $15, and the few sales you would lose wouldn't make a difference. All of this goes completely against how I see my own buying habits. I've bought a lot of Image trades, tried out a lot of Image books because of that $9.99, and then stuck with the books. Either occasionally picked them up, switched to picking them up in floppies, or continued to buy the $15, $16 trades that come later down the line. And I think if you're just looking at raw numbers of how many trades, how much money you're making off of a $9.99 comic versus a $15 comic, so let me say $10 graphic novel versus a $15 one, that doesn't take into account how many readers you win over to buy your second volume. Maybe you make just as much money by selling less $15 volumes, but you don't pick up as many readers to buy your next volume. So I think Image is right in their pricing strategy. I also think that the lower prices get more people to try your books. And so I'm excited to try a lot of DC books, which is going to be a little trickier. I'm not sure how many my tiny comic book shop will carry. I may have to go to other comic book shops to grab a few to try them out and then tell them to put it on the pull list. Yeah, and I guess I both am concerned about the prices for my own self, but also for the feeling of I want good comics to continue, and I think good pricing will make them survive longer, and will make them more diverse if they survive longer and sell more copies, even if the profits are the same in the short run. Another interesting thing on pricing that I've noticed, I feel like I'm kind of rushing myself too much through this vlog, which I guess I have to because I may get a call from my wife and daughter soon. So another thing on pricing that I noticed is if you have a $3.50 comic on ComiXology and anywhere else that sells digitally they will raise the price. They will either raise the price to $3.99 or lower the price to $2.99. So I wonder, and I think that pattern was started by Apple, who only does increments of 99 cents or something ending in 99, either 99 cents or $1.99 or $2.99, $3.99. So I think that's squeezing out the 350 comics, because they look at the digital and they're going to have to make it a higher or lower price. So I noticed that, Dark Horse now, almost all their comics, except for Mignolaverse comics now, are $3.99. But with a lot of Dark Horse comics, they're by people I haven't heard of and by artists who don't wow me initially. And I might try them out at a lower price, but at $3.99 I go, if I'm going to get a $3.99 comic, it's going to be one of these other ones, by Rick Remender or someone that I really like, that I know I'll get some value from. But so, again, looking at my own psychology, if the price of comics went up to $3.25, then $3.50, and then maybe to $4, I'd find it a lot of an easier transition. The whole dollar jump, that's going from $2.99 to $3.99, that is a 33% increase in price. That's a huge increase to swallow. So anyway, I feel it's interesting that the digital pricing may be pushing us to the dollar increments always. We're not going to go from $4 to $4.50. We're going to go from $4 to $5 and to $6. So it's weird how all these things affect each other. Well, so I'm out of time. I hope this all made sense somehow. I think my big takeaway is if you got a tablet or one of those very large phones and you're all interested in digital comics, there's a lot to explore, and you can start by exploring a lot of free stuff. On ComiXology, they have free comics too. Not a whole lot, but you can watch for sales. But really, try Hoopla. Try the first 30 days of various services. If you like digital comics and you're happy to just sort of browse through a smorgasbord, I think we're coming into a good time. With ComiXology Unlimited bringing up the rear. Maybe in time they will greatly expand. If you could pay for ComiXology Unlimited and read through a whole series, then it would be worth it. Then it would be viable binge reading. It's just going to be frustrating to read the beginning of a story and then not being able to continue unless you're willing to pay more. Also, for those who are curious, I did a video 2 weeks ago, I think, about the Luc and Dad video channel and their struggles with the health of Mrs. Luc and Dad and unemployment, etc. I did match the first week's donations, and those donations were good. I still have a little more I could match with, so if anyone out there wants to donate something to them and let me know about it, I will match up to a certain amount, which is more than $100. I still feel strongly about supporting them and making sure they can get themselves back on their feet for the long term. So I'll talk to you all later.